We are live. Let's do it. We've got a debate recap, and not one of those boring debate recaps you see on the cable shows. No, we're asking one simple question. Vivek Ramaswamy, villain or hero? We're literally going to let you decide. Also, is Joe Biden blackmailing the American people for more Ukraine funding by threatening to send our children to fight Russia? We'll let you decide that one too. I've already made up my mind. And the Washington Post really wants you to take a day off and not read anything on their website. Well, that'll be a sacrifice, won't it? All right, fine. I'm going to say it again. It's Larry time. Just smooth sailing from here on in. All right, you heard it. Is Vivek Ramaswamy a hero or a villain? It is incredible. Not since Donald Trump have you got people with such fervent and dedicated opinions about a presidential candidate. Vivek Ramaswamy has people who want him to go away forever, and their skin just crawls and their blood curdles when they hear him talking. And there are other people who believe that he is our only hope going forward, and he's the only one on the debate stage that is actually speaking truth and telling it like it is. There's no in between, it appears. Although I might be in between on this. I'm not sure yet. Let's review the videos, and then we'll reach our conclusions. Here's one of the big moments last night in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. And it actually needs to end. There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party. It has been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards the people of this country are too. Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Governor Haley.
All right, so that sort of speaks to me actually on multiple levels. But at the same time, I can see why people hated it. All right, first of all, he is right about Nikki Haley. I mean, enough with the, oh, I've got my high heels and I'm going to throw them, and it takes a woman to do a man's job and all that stuff. Well, we hate that. We conservatives hate that. All right, that is identity politics. It is just because Vivek Ramaswamy criticized Ronna McDaniel, that doesn't mean he's got a woman problem. He's got a Ronna McDaniel problem, and a lot of us do. And we don't like walking down this path that if you criticize a woman in a position of power, that somehow you're anti-woman. No, I'm sorry. If a woman wants that position of power, then they've got to be ready to take criticisms without cowering and saying, oh, you're only doing this because I'm a woman. And to Vivek Ramaswamy's benefit, you don't hear him doing this for himself. You don't say, as a man of color, I believe. No, he doesn't do that. Not that I've noticed, at least. That said, there's 2 things about the whole Nikki is corrupt thing that need to be unpacked. The first is I instinctively don't like seeing this in a Republican debate because I'm a Reagan guy, and Reagan said the 11th commandment is thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. We do need to stick together and focus on who the real problem is, which is Joe Biden and the leftist Democrats who control him. And we do need every faction within the conservative movement and Republican Party to band together. Otherwise, we're not going to defeat him, okay? And Democrats are really good at that. You look at Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama in 2008, they were throwing hammers at each other right up until the last primary, but then they unified. We got to figure that out too, okay? Number 1. Number 2, the real problem with Nikki Haley's corruption, as Vivek Ramaswamy calls it, is that it's legal. You see, the American people hear corrupt, and we think that someone's breaking the law, that someone should go to jail, that somebody's violating some sort of major statute, and that they're corrupt and should be in prison. No, the real problem with what Vivek Ramaswamy calls Nikki Haley's corruption is that all of it is legal. In fact, all of it is business as usual in Washington, D.C. And I think that it dumbs it down by calling it corrupt, because people think then suddenly she's guilty of something and she can just up and say, I haven't broken a law. I'm not guilty of anything. And she's not. And that's the real problem. It's not Nikki Haley who's corrupt. It's the system that she exploits that's corrupt because it makes it legal. All right, a little bit more here. Next step for, you know what? The biggest problem for Nikki Haley at the debate last night was this. How many times is that the expression we caught on her face? This was a different Nikki Haley last night, as she was getting it from both Ramaswamy and DeSantis. And so many times they cut to her, and this was the face. I mean, it evokes the low energy Jeb kind of vibe, and it wasn't a good look for her. Here's some more from Vivek.
I want to say one thing about the tie to Ukraine, if I may. So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to know that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there. The donors right there that are playing like the puppet masters.
Hold on.
All right. She makes a good point. Again, I do like the distinction between foreign policy experience and foreign policy wisdom. You think about it. In the last 50 years, what 2 presidents have been the most effective in terms of real results for the American people and for global advancement of the American ideals on the world stage? And if pressed, I would say Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan won the Cold War and ended all of the domination of the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe and ended communism, at least the European brand of communism, for all the world to see. And we were told he had no foreign policy. We thought, why, he's just an actor, and he was the governor of California. We need someone with foreign policy experience. What, like Jimmy Carter? Right? And Donald Trump ended our military engagement around the world that the American people had grown tired of. He created new peace accords in the Middle East that no one expected to happen with Israel and Arab countries. Donald Trump advanced us with regard to our relationship with Israel and our relationship in Europe, frankly, by finally getting European partners in NATO to pony up and pay more for security there. He actually got Europe to divest themselves from Vladimir Putin's Russia so that they could have some energy independence. Sadly, as soon as he was no longer president, they went back, and look where they are now with regard to Putin. And he had no foreign policy. Oh, he's just a businessman. He's going to get us all killed. He's going to move us toward World War III. Well, here we have Joe Biden with 50 years of foreign policy experience, probably the most experienced man we've ever had in the White House in foreign policy. And how's that marching toward World War III looking for you right now? We do need to just completely remove this idea that you have to have a resume credit with either an ambassadorship or something in the State Department, because the people who run the State Department right now, forgive me, are part of the problem, I think. The fact that you're not associated with the long-term American foreign policy morass that has been part of the problem in this country is actually a benefit, not a detriment. And I think that it's fair for Vivek to point that out. I agree. More.
So first of all, I think we just learned something from Christie. We learned 3 things. We learned 3 things right there. First of all, Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants us to fight for. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York. Yeah. So do everybody a favor. Just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this race. When it comes to Nikki, I think if you're going to act...
See, this is why... Again, just on the substance... I think he actually scores a lot of points. But that entire thing was just a gratuitous ad hominem attack against Chris Christie. That said, the only reason Chris Christie is there is to deliver gratuitous ad hominem attacks against Donald Trump and anyone who supports him. So, I mean, I guess if Christie can dish it out, he should be able to take it.
Actually send your sons and daughters to go die in somebody else's war.
Hold on.
Excuse me, Chris, I'm speaking, and I'm not done yet.
I haven't heard the time when you aren't
and we're going to be
speaking.
done. So listen up to this. If these people want to send your sons and daughters to go die in Ukraine, they've been arguing for it for a year. $200 billion of our taxpayer money sent over. Neither of them could even name for you the provinces that they actually want to protect. And this is the people who have been touting their so-called foreign policy experience. It is intellectual fraud. These people are lying to you, the same people who told you about weapons and mass destruction in Iraq to justify that invasion didn't know the first thing about it, yet they sent thousands of our sons and daughters to go die. The same people who told you the same in Afghanistan, where the Taliban is still in charge 20 years later. $7 trillion of our national debt due to these toxic neocons. You can put lipstick on a Dick Cheney. It is still a fascist neocon.
Thank
and
you,
you got to
Mr.
see that
Ramaswamy.
today.
Thank you,
It's
Mr.
Dick Cheney
Ramaswamy.
all over again in this
Okay.
party.
Thank you.
Lipstick on a Dick Cheney. I mean, that is Liz Cheney by definition, isn't it? But still, we get the point. You know what? I just want to plow through many of these. But although I said at the beginning of the show that we are going to let you know, the question is Vivek Ramaswamy, hero or villain, which of course only makes me want to sing a Beach Boys song. If you know, you know. But I said we're going to literally let you decide, and you're doing exactly what I need you to do. I forgot to ask you. Give us your comments. What do you think? Whether you're watching us on YouTube or on X or on Facebook or wherever the hell else we are. Give us your comments now live. And as you can see, the great Kevin McMahon is stringing them in there. Is he a hero? Is he a villain? Give us your comments so you can have your voice heard there on the show right below me. Let's get to the next one. Another clip of Vivek Ramaswamy. Because honestly, that's the only takeaway from last night's debate. Can we just be real? None of these people are going to be the nominee this year. Donald Trump is going to be the nominee. So when we give you the debate analysis, it's like, okay, well, you know, what are we talking about here? It's not about who's going to be president. The main question coming out of last night was, do you love Vivek or do you hate Vivek? Because it's got to be one or the other. There's no in between, it appears. So here's a little bit more Vivek.
I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state that at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job, that the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11, that the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform, that the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech, that the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment that actually put up the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they knew was false. There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take, not people who are licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking and criticizing him when it's convenient.
All right. There was a lot to unpack there, wasn't there? Let me just take a pause for a minute and say about Vivek Ramaswamy, and more importantly, as I always like to bring these conversations back to, about the people who support Vivek Ramaswamy, the people who might vote for Vivek Ramaswamy or somebody who articulates his ideas. In other words, lost in all of these conversations that you see in the news media is you, the voter, the people. And the fact of the matter is Vivek Ramaswamy does have quite a lot of support out there. From my experience, mostly from people under the age of 35 or maybe even 30 who feel like they have been lied to by career politicians, who feel like nobody will actually come out and speak the truth, who feel like as they live most of their life in social media, that there is censorship, that you're not allowed to express certain opinions or you will be deleted and canceled because that's true. These are the people who love Tucker Carlson's show. They're the people who do lean toward the right but look for independent voices. Vivek Ramaswamy, in this moment, represents those people. You can call them names. You can say they're conspiracy theorists. You can do whatever you want. But the fact is the Republican Party is their natural home right now because of most of the things they believe about independence and freedom and about not trusting the government That's our brand, guys, and it's a good one to have. It goes all the way back to Ronald Reagan, who told you that the scariest words in the American language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." We have a built-in distrust of the government. We're conservatives. You just saw it voiced there by Vivek Ramaswamy, and the people who like that are also the ones who were giving Tucker Carlson millions and millions and millions of views on a regular basis. And if the Republican Party is smart, that is a question that is still open for debate. But if the Republican Party is smart, they need to understand how to harness that energy and get those people within our ranks. We can't just stand up and say, "Oh, we don't want you. You're odious. You're horrible." What did he say that wasn't true? Are you telling me it doesn't look like January 6th in some way was a corrupt inside job with the FBI, with all those informants? The evidence shows that that's exactly the case. I mean, I can go on, but to say that you have a distrust of the government and you feel like we've been lied to for years, that makes you some kind of person who is not included in the big tent of the Republican Party, I'm sorry, you're speaking a foreign language to me. But this is why Vivek engenders so much passion on both sides of the question. All right, more Vivek, because he's the takeaway from this debate.
The North Star here is transgenderism is a mental health disorder. We don't let you smoke a cigarette by the age of 18. We don't let you have an addictive drink of alcohol by the age of 21. And I just challenge Ron DeSantis to go one step further and support what I think is clearly within the authority to do, using federal funds just like Reagan did in '84 for the Highway Act that said the minimum drinking age needs to be 21. We can do the same thing when it comes to banning genital mutilation or chemical castration.
Okay.
I know Ron's been unclear about that on the federal
Haley.
level. I'm crystal clear. That's where I stand.
Got it.
That's a mental health disorder. That's where we need to be at.
Go ahead.
The North.
There's a lot of hate coming Vivek Ramaswamy's way about saying it's a mental disorder. It should be pointed out that up until about a minute and a half ago, that's exactly what the American Psychological Association would say as well. So to say that he's now vilified and should be canceled because he dares to suggest that maybe, just maybe, political pressure and a political agenda got the APA to change that perspective, maybe that is something that should be revisited, right? All right, more Vivek?
Mr. Ramaswamy.
I'll use this to just address a topic we didn't talk about tonight, but I think is one of the most important topics that needs to be discussed. That is this climate change agenda that is shackling this country like a set of handcuffs. I said at the first debate, and I stand by it. The climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. That's what we have to see. 98% reduction in the climate disaster-related deaths in the last century. 8 times as many people are going to die of cold temperatures this year than warm ones. Yet against that backdrop, there's an issue coming up in Iowa. It's core to Iowa farmers. I met Kim Junker, Kathy Stockdale, and other farmers who are about to have a carbon capture pipeline built across their land using eminent domain to do it. That's unconstitutional and it's wrong. And if you thought COVID was bad, what's coming with this climate agenda is far worse. We should not be bending the knee to this new religion. That is what it is. It is a substitute for a modern religion. We are flogging ourselves and losing our modern way of life, bowing to this new god of climate, and that will end on my watch.
Thank
it's
you,
the most critical
Ambassador
issue
Haley.
that's coming up. Thank you.
All right. I've been trying to peruse the comments that Kevin is throwing up here. And Kevin, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you think I have this wrong. But it appears that you are just as divided as everybody else I see on social media. You either love him or you hate him. You may think he's a villain. You may think he's a hero. But there's not a whole lot of in between. And I don't think we've solved it here. I don't think any of you watching live, at least right now, are going to swing it one way or the other. So we're going to have to stay divided on Vivek Ramaswamy, sadly. But I will tell you this. I may be one of the few outliers in this. Here's where I am on Vivek Ramaswamy, because I've known him now for a little over a year and a half. I've interviewed him several times. I've gotten to meet him several times. A lot of people are saying he's pretending he's an actor. By looking at the fact that he used to hold slightly different views than what he's got now, and in some cases radical views than he has now, doesn't mean he's an actor and he's pretending right now. Otherwise, you should disqualify Donald Trump from the positions that he now holds in the public sphere. Number one, I don't think that a person his age should be criticized for evolving over the last 10 years in his positions, right? I mean, because who among us haven't evolved from the age of 25 to 35? Number one. Number two, when push comes to shove, you put a gun to my head. Do I like him or hate him? I like him. I like Vivek Ramaswamy, and I like what he has brought to this debate. Because this debate is not about who's going to be the Republican nominee. Who know who's going to be the Republican nominee. It's going to be Donald Trump. This debate is about key issues in the Republican Party that we need to crystallize, get out in the open, discuss and debate, and then rally around our nominee and deliver to that nominee, hey, here's what's important to us. We've just had a debate over these topics, and we want you to carry the torch. All right? That's what's happening. And I'm glad Vivek Ramaswamy's voice is there from his perspective about these issues that we need to discuss. That said, I also completely understand and get why people hate him. I see you, I hear you, and I get it. You're not completely wrong. You are not out to lunch, and I will not gaslight you and say, why? He's completely likable. Why? I want my daughter to marry a guy who acts like this at the Thanksgiving dinner table. No, I don't. I really, really don't. I've got one other quickie from the debate last night that doesn't involve Vivek Ramaswamy, but it really needs to be seen because it's Megyn Kelly's finest moment and should spell the end of Chris Christie's presidential ambitions. This was chef's kiss. Megyn, go.
He said that you got into this race just to stop President Trump. His approval rating with Republicans is currently at 81%. Yours is at 25%. Your best state is New Hampshire, and even there, 2/3 of GOP voters say they would be angry and disappointed if you won. Respectfully, Governor, you have not stopped Mr. Trump, and voters may wonder how you could possibly become the nominee of a party that does not appear to like you very much.
Yeah, well, look, Megyn.
You know what? It doesn't even matter what he has to say because it's over. At that point, Chris Christie, it's over. That was devastating. That was absolutely devastating and, frankly, kind of beautiful. Chris Christie was sort of on the bubble, which is an image we should all try to get past as soon as possible. There was a thought that he might not even qualify for this debate. I think he's probably regretting that he did because that was you're here for one reason and one reason only, to stop Donald Trump. And the fact is he's actually more popular since you've joined this engagement, and you're less popular. With all due respect, I do love it when they say with respect. With respect, Governor Christie, what the hell are you even doing here? Megyn Kelly. All right, the guy all these guys want to replace and get rid of is Joe Biden. And yesterday, he got really emotional, real exercised, and he called an impromptu press conference, although it wasn't really a press conference because he barely took questions from the media. But it was all about getting that funding for his Ukraine bill. This is what exercises him. This is what gets him excited. And at one moment, one of the reporters shouted out a question to him. And it's a very simple question. You've said that you had no interactions with your son's business partners. So why is it you've had so many business interactions and personal interactions with your son's business partners? His answer is quintessential Joe Biden.
President Biden, on Ukraine and also China, there's polling by the Associated Press that shows that almost 70% of Americans, including 40% of Democrats, believe that you acted either illegally or unethically in regards to your family's business interests. Can you explain to the Americans, amid this impeachment inquiry, why you interacted with so many of your son and brother's foreign business associates?
I'm not going to comment on that. I did not. And it's just a bunch of lies.
You didn't interact with many of their business associates?
I did not. There's lies.
I'm not going to comment on this except to deny it and say that it's lies. Well, forgive me. I know that your brain is in fact mashed potatoes, as we often note on this program. But by claiming that that's a lie, you are in fact commenting on this. And of course, by saying it's a lie, you are yourself lying. Because we've seen the pictures, we've seen the text messages, we've seen the emails. Joe Biden interacted with his son and his brother's business associates at least 22 times that have been documented. And he's still denying it. But he always has denied it from the very beginning. Whenever anybody brings it up, did you see the look on his face? Did you see the anger, the vitriol? Look at it. Look at him snarling. Those are lies. Remember when an Iowa voter back in 2015, before the Iowa caucuses, said, why did your son do all these things? He said, you're a liar, man. I'm going to take you outside behind this. But that's what he always does. He gets aggressive. He gets in your face and acts like you're the problem. How dare you bring up the truth? They're not lies. And he still hasn't answered the question. It's a real easy question to answer, by the way. And he won't. Do you know why? Because he's trapped. That said, when he did get really passionate and really exercised about the only thing that matters to him, apparently, which is to keep funding the government of Ukraine, he had some whoppers. The most disturbing one, actually, we'll get to in a moment. But first, he decided to lambaste Republicans for daring to say, okay, pal, you want your Ukraine funding? This is a legislative process. We negotiate things. How about this? How about you actually enforce the laws on the border? And we write new laws that keep you from claiming amnesty if you don't actually have any claim for amnesty, because that's the loophole that people are parading through by the tens of thousands per day through our border by falsely claiming amnesty. Let's change the language in our amnesty laws. Let's shut this down once and for all. Then maybe you can have your Ukraine funding. Here's Biden's response.
Extreme Republicans are playing chicken with our national security, holding Ukraine's funding hostage to their extreme partisan border policies.
Yeah. By shutting down the border and actually securing our nation, that's extreme and partisan to this guy. And he says we're playing chicken with national security. Understand for a second what he means there. I'll play it from the beginning again.
Extreme Republicans are playing chicken with our national security.
The question here is Ukraine funding for the Ukrainian war with Russia or our border security. And between those two issues, the only one that he considers to be our American national security interest is the Ukraine question. That's what he's characterizing as playing chicken with our national security. The border problem, that has nothing to do with our national security, even though the Border Patrol falls under literally the Department of Homeland Security. For this guy, the problem is you're not giving enough money to Ukraine. And then it got really disturbing because the president said something that a president should never say unless we are at an extremely high threat level. Listen.
Well, we've committed as a NATO member that we defend every inch of NATO territory. Then we'll have something that we don't seek and that we don't have today. American troops fighting Russian troops. American troops fighting Russian troops if he moves into other parts of NATO.
I hope you understand the gravity of what he just did there. If you don't give me the money that I demand right now for Ukraine, the next step is we will have American troops fighting Russian troops. Now, the point he's trying to make is that if Russia wins in Ukraine, then they're going to move forward to Poland, and Poland is part of NATO. And we have a treaty that says if Russia invades a NATO country, we will commit American troops to defend that NATO country. But what he just said there was not quite that cut and dry, was it? It was tagged completely to funding. And he repeated twice that American troops would be fighting Russian troops. How do you think that goes over in Russia? What do you think the Russian ear hears when the president of the United States is raising the specter of American troops fighting Russian troops? And a little later in the day, his National Security Council spokesperson, John Kirby, repeated it, but in even more drastic, dire, and offensive terms.
And so we can't support Ukraine. Their chief advisor yesterday said they're likely to lose this war if they lose the U.S. support. And Putin gets all of Ukraine, then what? Then where does he go? Because right then, he's up against the eastern flank of NATO. And if you think the cost of supporting Ukraine is high now, just imagine how much higher it's going to be, not just in national treasure, but in American blood. if he starts going after one of our NATO allies, because as the president also said, we take our Article 5 commitments very seriously.
American blood. American blood. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think that the White House should be a little more cautious, a little more judicious, and a little more circumspect when they start raising the specter of engaging American troops overseas to fight against a foreign country and using terms like American blood that will be spilt at the direction of this White House. Two real important points that you need to know about this. The first is the language here that's being employed by these thugs, by these bullies. And again, it's all about not getting the billions of your dollars that they demand. You give us the American people's money so we can spend it in Ukraine. That's what they want. And the stakes are being raised higher and higher because finally we have a Republican majority in the House that's saying, we're not going to give you a blank check. And what you've got here from the president and from John Kirby is tantamount to them saying, it's a real nice family you've got there. Sure would be a shame if one of your sons or daughters was sent over to fight a war and their blood was spilt. Wouldn't want that to happen. So pony up with the funding for Ukraine. It's despicable. It's disgusting. And it's the kind of thing that used to be condemned across the board in American politics and certainly in the American news media. But what I'm telling you right now, you didn't hear much of last night, did you? Or this morning? Oh, one other thing you need to know. They're raising the specter of Russia after they win in Ukraine. They're claiming if we don't fund them, they will beat Ukraine, and now Russia will possess Ukraine. They're raising the specter that their next step is to invade a NATO country. That country is Poland. I want you to Google this. Go ahead and look it up. In September, the Polish government said they were going to stop arming Ukraine. So I just need you to understand this, and then I need you to ask this question. They won't answer it, but the question needs to be asked. If this White House is now threatening that if they don't get their funding, our American sons and daughters in the military will be deployed and their blood will be spilt, as John Kirby just alluded to, then if that's going to happen because Russia invades Poland, why isn't Poland worried about it? Why isn't Poland arming Ukraine anymore? And I know, oh, well, it's because they have a grain dispute and they're having disputes over their border and they're having to, okay, I get that. But you would think Poland would be the most worried about Russia. And apparently, no. John Kirby and Joe Biden are. All right. Speaking of Joe Biden, he is losing support from where he needs it most. And that would be liberals on Comedy Central. Here's Charlemagne the God. By the way, Kevin, I'm just thinking from now on, I want you to call me Larry the God. Can we do that? Can we? Let's just, I need you to go on the record right now and say that from now on, when I'm in the office, when we're doing our show prep, I am not just Larry or that other name you call me, which I really hate. I want Larry the God. Are you on board?
You know what? For very few people, I would do that, Larry. But for you,
all right,
I'll take it under advisement.
It's not, I don't ask your priest. It's not idol worship. I don't think, it's not anything like that. You're not like violating Deuteronomy or anything. Just Larry.
Can't serve two masters, Larry. Can't serve two masters.
Fair enough. All right, back to Charlemagne the God. Charlemagne the God, filling it on Comedy Central, had, his own opinion of where we stand right now with Joe Biden as the Democrat nominee.
So Donald Trump is currently running on a platform of dictatorship, and the only man standing in his way.
Hold on. Donald Trump is running on the platform of dictatorship. This actually passes as political commentary amongst the Comedy Central left. Because of the thing we did yesterday when he said, just for day one. All right, fine. Donald Trump is running on a platform of dictatorship.
Is President Joe Biden seen here looking at his own approval ratings? People have been questioning why Biden hasn't stepped aside, and last night Biden gave an answer that just raise more questions.
Now to President Biden's candid new remark on why he's running for re-election.
During a closed-door fundraiser Tuesday, Biden told supporters, quote, "If Trump wasn't running, I'm not sure I'd be running, but we cannot let him win."
And just a short time ago, John, he renewed his claims that he's going to beat Trump. Watch.
Do you think there is any Democrat who could defeat Donald Trump other than you?
Probably 50 of them.
You do believe that there are?
I'm not the only one to read it, but I will defeat it.
Oh, my God. This is Biden's ego talking. Okay, if you think there are other people who can beat him, step aside, all right? I know you think you've got this in the bag. I know he thinks he's got this in the bag, but the polls say otherwise. I want Biden stepping in to beat Trump the way I want him stepping in to defend me at a bar fight. I appreciate you caring, but I don't like our chances. The point is, we don't need Biden to beat Donald Trump, just like we didn't need RBG to stay on the court, okay? Maybe if RBG had retired during the Obama years, we'd still have Roe v. Wade. Maybe. But people said, no, she needs to be here to protect Roe. And now, look, both of them are gone. It's true. They're both gone. See, the facts are Biden's not getting any younger. He's not going to get any more popular, and he's not getting a new running mate. So please, Mr. President, give America the ultimate Christmas gift and step aside.
Wow. You know, when Charlamagne the God and Comedy Central, you hear the applause there? When the clapping and laughing hyenas in the audience at the Daily Show start applauding the idea of Joe Biden stepping aside as a Christmas present, you're in trouble if you're Joe Biden. Latest polls, by the way, out of CNN, I think have him at a 31% approval rating. That's a death knell. It's bad. That's a big takeaway from that clip. The other big takeaway is we're funnier than that. I think we need a laugh track or something, or maybe should we do this in front of a live audience? We are so much funnier than Comedy Central. All right, but that's a whole other story. Speaking of funny, Bill Burr is pretty funny. And he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel and said sort of the same thing, but even more so, pivoted back to Jimmy Kimmel and the left and Hollywood and Democrats and how they basically made Donald Trump unstoppable, all in the spirit of trying to stop him.
Like, you want to see a great case thing on like narcissism. Liberals are so stupid the way that they handle Trump.
What do you mean?
You should shut up. He's a narcissist. Neutral energy.
Yeah.
Neutral.
You think he'd go away?
You know what I think he was? I think he was a one-hit wonder. Right? He wrote The Twist. And then that was it. He was on the casino circuit, and then you idiot liberals wrote him Twist again when you indicted him. And now he's a martyr.
And now he's
coming back, Jimmy.
The peppermint twist is back.
Coming back. It's going to be great for comedy. He's coming back. I can't believe like these are honestly going to be our two choices, because I really try to with each thing to try to be like figure out who I'm going to put. I mean, there's got to be. I want somebody in their 40s, somebody that's going to have to live with their decisions. I don't want like, you know, with any luck, they'll both die of natural causes before the election. And maybe you could get somebody that still has something to live for.
Wow.
Well, I don't think there's anything funny about wishing either of those candidates die before the election, certainly. But he does make a very good point about the left and Jimmy Kimmel and late night comment. They can't get enough of Trump. And if you're really a conspiracy theorist, you'll agree that they've actually promoted him and brought him back. They want him back because they've never seen ratings like that before. And cynically, it's exactly what they want, and it's exactly what they're going to get. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time on that hearing that involved the University of Pennsylvania and MIT and Harvard. We didn't get to another very important hearing that took place that I really want you to focus on, and that had to do with Christopher Wray, the FBI director, facing off in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Our friend, Senator John Kennedy, he's not our friend. I've never met him, but I want to meet him, and I want to have a beer with him. Senator John Kennedy kicked things off.
Why didn't the FBI just say, hey, the laptop's real? Why didn't you just tell everybody the laptop's real? We're not vouching for what's on it, but it's real. This isn't a fiction.
Just some context here. I'm sure you've already picked up on this, but I just want to make sure that you know. This had to do with the controversy leading up to the presidential election when a letter of 50 so-called intelligence community experts and all of the media and the New York Times and everybody said that the Russia laptop was in fact excuse me, did I say the Russian laptop? Sorry, the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. And Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump are engaged in Russian propaganda, and it's a Russian info op campaign. And here's Putin trying to steal the election, and they're betraying the country because that's all they got. That's all they got. And the FBI knew better. The FBI had that laptop. Sorry, I got very excited there. The FBI hit my mouse. The FBI had that laptop from December of 2019, a year before. They knew that it was legit. They knew it was real. And Kennedy is saying something very specific here and very important, especially when you're about to hear Christopher Wray's answer, which was, you didn't need to come out and say Hunter Biden's guilty. You didn't need to come out and say that, that he's going to be convicted or that you've reached a conclusion in your investigation. All you had to do, as you were seeing people say that it was Russian disinformation and you were asked about it, all you had to do was say, this is not Russian disinformation. That's it. Because that's the truth. And what John Kennedy is saying is, why didn't you, Senator Kennedy, what he is saying is, why didn't you just step forward and tell us the truth? Nothing more. Don't get involved in politics. Don't, screw up your ongoing investigation. It's always an ongoing investigation. All you had to do was say the truth. That's not too much to ask from the FBI. In fact, it's literally the bare minimum to ask from the FBI. We're 3 weeks before the election. The Hunter Biden laptop story hits the New York Post. It is immediately slimed and slandered as Russian disinformation, including by Joe Biden himself at a debate against Donald Trump. All the FBI had to do was say, it's real. It is not Russian disinformation. And we will have no further comment until our criminal investigation is complete. That's all they had to say. So why didn't they?
Well, as you might imagine, the FBI cannot, especially in a time like that, be talking about an ongoing investigation. Second, I would tell you that at least my understanding is that both the FBI folks involved in the conversations and the Twitter folks involved in the conversations both say that the FBI did not direct Twitter to suppress.
But others were in government.
Well, I can't speak to others in government. Now, that's part of the point that I was trying to make, because the Fifth Circuit's
but you're the FBI. You're not part of the White House and part of Homeland Security. You're not supposed to be political. You see all this controversy going on. Why didn't the FBI say, time out, folks? We're not getting in the middle of this, but the laptop's real.
Again, we have to be very careful about what we can say, especially in the middle of an election season, because that's precisely some of the problems that led to my predecessors' negative findings from the Inspector General.
Did you hear a gavel?
Thank you, sir.
That is slimy and smarmy and deceptive and disgusting. Well, my predecessor, James Comey, he got into a lot of hot water because he said something about Hillary Clinton's emails during the presidential campaign. Think about what Christopher Wray is saying here. We can't get involved in something like that if it's political, because then we'll be criticized. We can't tell the truth. We would much rather sit back and let a lie catch fire across the nation, thus absolving one person in the political equation and at the same time slandering the other person. Because understand something. Christopher Wray saying that this laptop is not Russian disinformation would not indict Joe Biden. All it would do is silence the people who claimed it was Russian disinformation. But by not saying anything, he's claiming, I can't say anything because that would be political. Well, by not telling the truth, by not saying something, he allowed the lie to fester. He allowed the lie to be the only official word from the United States government. And that lie, in fact, did indict Donald Trump. Because the lie was, this is Russian disinformation, and Donald Trump and his minion, Rudy Giuliani, created it, and they're working with Putin to steal the election. And by his silence, Christopher Wray allowed that to be the narrative. So this whole thing, we can't say anything in the middle of an election. By not saying something, he's actually engaging in politics, more so than if he just told the truth. What a despicable human being. And that's just scratching the surface. Josh Hawley wanted to know why Catholics are being targeted by the FBI. He still hasn't given a real good answer to this. So here's the latest try.
Director, this is one of the most outrageous targetings. You have mobilized your division, the most powerful law enforcement division in the world, against traditionalist Catholics, whatever the heck that means. And you're just told us you have not fired a single person. I mean, here, it gets worse. Your Richmond field office, they thought there was nothing wrong with this. The House interviewed the head of the Richmond field office. He testified. It's all here in the public report. I refer you to it, pages 12, 13, 14. He testified he saw no problem with this. He said he thought it was fine. In fact, we have internal memoranda of the members of the field office high-fiving. One peer reviewer, another member of the field office wrote, "I think this is a great product. I really enjoyed the read." Do you have a problem with systemic bigotry against Catholics in the FBI?
No.
What are you going to do about this? Are you going to fire these people or not?
Those individuals have all been admonished, and it is all going into their, if you would let me finish my answer, it is all going into their annual performance reviews, which has direct impact on their compensation, among other things.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. I see. So the 60 million American Catholics who now learn that your FBI has recommended that priests be recruiters, informants, your FBI has gone to priests, choir directors, but we're to feel better because you've admonished them for their wrongdoing.
You again are conflating two different things.
I'm not. I am taking your testimony where you said you do not. You said categorically, you said we do not go to priests and ask them about their parishioners. You said we do not. You didn't say we haven't. You didn't say we won't. You said we don't. As it turns out, you do. And you kept it from the public. You deliberately misled Congress about it. And the only reason we know about it is because a whistleblower came forward.
I just fundamentally disagree with your characterization.
Well, there's no characterization. The facts are the facts. And I fundamentally resent the fact that you have violated, if not the spirit, if not the letter, certainly the spirit of the First Amendment, and use your law enforcement agency against Catholics in this nation.
Yeah, and by doing that, it doesn't actually warrant being fired. You get warned, and it goes into your permanent record, young man. And as you heard from Christopher Wray, this is going to affect what kind of raise they get. Wow. Instead of that big raise, you're only going to get about, a 10% increase because you targeted people over their religious practices. Every single one of these FBI agents, by the way, all raise their hand and swear to defend and support the Constitution of the United States. They might want to look at the amendments to that Constitution while they're supporting and defending it. Ted Cruz's turn now with Christopher Wray.
Is the FBI, do they make a routine practice of allowing partisan political optics to prevent investigating serious evidence of corruption?
My instructions to our people on this and on every other investigation are that we are to follow the facts wherever they lead, no matter who likes it, no matter what political influence
Then why did
may
you
be
get
out
the
there.
GPS data on where Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were?
Again, Senator, with respect, I can't discuss
But it's
an
not
ongoing
with respect.
investigation.
And Director Wray, you and I have gone round and round on this because I understand anytime you're asked about this, the answer is it's an ongoing investigation. Of course, the investigation isn't ongoing. You're not doing the work. You got whistleblowers pointing out that you're not doing the work, and you are hiding behind the skirts of the Attorney General.
That's right. I can't comment on an ongoing cover-up of an investigation. I can't comment on the ongoing obstruction of justice that we're engaged in, that we're making look like an investigation to keep me from having to comment on it. That's really what Christopher Wray is saying.
The amazing thing is, Director Wray, I've known you 30 years. You're not a partisan Democrat. You're simply sitting blithely by while career partisans in your agency allow it to be weaponized. And you are damaging the FBI and you are damaging the Department of Justice.
Well said, Ted Cruz. We'll let him have the last word on that one. That's honestly, it doesn't get any better than that. But I really wanted to circle back and make sure that you saw Christopher Wray's testimony the other day, because again, that didn't get much coverage in the mainstream media either. And that's why you're here. Thank you very much. All right. So speaking of the mainstream media, the Washington Post reporters and journalists and employees are on strike for a day, just a day. They want you to take 24 hours off of clicking on that website or buying the newspaper. We'll get to that in a minute. But here's the video that they put out imploring you and explaining exactly why they are the aggrieved group of hardworking journalists that they are.
I have risked my life on the front lines of war.
I've covered an insurrection,
a global pandemic,
Historic racial justice protests, climate change,
and gun violence in America.
Yeah, just real fast here. How many of those stories did they get right? I've covered all these really important stories. Really, I bet you all of them were wrong. Notice how they left out Russian collusion, by the way. That was their biggest story. The New York Times actually reoriented their entire newsroom to cover that story. The Washington Post was relentless on Russian collusion because we had a president of the United States who was put there due to the tampering of Vladimir Putin. It's the biggest story of our history. Notice how now, when they're trying to explain all the important stories they've covered to rationalize their strike and why they deserve better pay and better work conditions, they leave that one out. Why would they leave Russian collusion out?
I work hard to make sure you know exactly what's going on in our DC community.
to hold powerful institutions to account.
And to bring you the latest visuals from around the globe.
And I'm worth a fair and transparent pay process.
I'm worth a living wage.
I'm worth raises that keep up with inflation.
I'm worth equal pay to my.
I got to pause with raises that keep up with inflation. Well, you know, one way to have raises that keep up with inflation is to not have inflation. And why do we have inflation? Because these guys and their newspaper did everything they could to get Joe Biden into the White House. I mean, if they really want to have wages that keep up with inflation, maybe they should do something to get rid of this guy. But you won't hear that. No, Jeff Bezos has to pony up. And trust me, I'm not on Bezos' side. I see this as sort of like a Notre Dame versus USC football game. I want both sides to lose, and I want everyone to have career-ending injuries. Okay, I don't want either side to win. That's not true. I don't want college athletes to have career-ending injuries. Or maybe USC and Ohio State.
Colleagues, regardless of my race or gender.
I'm worth job protections that value my years of service.
We've been in contract negotiations for 18 months. And our bosses have refused to bargain in good faith.
They have failed to offer us a fair deal that keeps pace with the economy and our competitors.
So on Thursday, I'm walking off the job.
I am walking off the job
for 24 hours.
with hundreds of my Washington Post colleagues.
because we're worth more.
Worth more.
Worth more. Worth more than what the company is offering.
If you love Washington Post journalism and the people who make it,
You can support us by
Sending a letter to our publisher through the link in our caption or our bio.
and respecting our picket line by avoiding Washington Post journalism during our 24-hour walkout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you for standing with Washington Post employees.
24 hours. That'll do it. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos, who is the publisher, who's getting these, emails from their big supporters, he's like sitting watching the numbers on Amazon Prime during the Christmas holiday season. He's like, yeah, I really don't care. He really doesn't care. Nor should he, frankly. Here's a live look at the strike from this morning. Worst parade ever. I'm sorry, my heart does not bleed for the journalists at the Washington Post and all the other employees there. Honestly, they should get another job. They should just get another job. You don't like it at the Washington Post, go work at another great newspaper, right? It's a free country. Byron York points out that the Washington Post employees have asked you to respect their picket line by avoiding Washington Post journalism during the 24-hour walkout. And our friend and colleague at Town Hall, Kurt Schlichter, has said that he is way ahead of them. I'm with Kurt. We've been avoiding Washington Post journalism for well more than just this 24-hour window. And I intend to continue to do so. Speaking of Kurt Schlichter, he is our pal. Kurt Schlichter, the senior columnist at Town Hall. You know him. You love him. And last night, he was on Gutfeld. That's cool. Funny show, and Kurt's a funny guy. So here's a little bit.
Kurt, how do you see this going forward over the year? I mean, just listening to Trump,
when you get a dose, you can't help but laugh.
Well, look, if I was a insurance underwriter, I'd be very, very depressed about Joe Biden right now. This guy is old. He is Methuselah old. He is riding dinosaurs old. He is a crusty, desiccated old pervert who was stupid to begin with, and now he's senile, and that's kind of going easy on him. He's a terrible person in every way. And this stuff about Trump being a dictator, it would be terrible if Trump went out and, persecuted his political enemies and tried to silence them. That would be awful. Now, Trump would launch an attack on democracy. I'm not, look, I'm from California, so I don't understand democracy because we have Gavin Newsom. I'm just worried that, Joe Biden's going to wander off chasing an imaginary squirrel and be replaced with Gavin Newsom. And he's going to run on the slogan, I'm going to make California or make America just like California and have a hobo in every pot. So,
yeah, that's funny. Kurt's very funny, and he did a great job. That's just a little snippet. Go and watch the whole thing if you didn't catch it last night. We're very proud of him. I'm really, really happy for him and not jealous at all. No, I really am. I am not jealous. He's fantastic. He was great. And I want you all to know that he's still returning my phone calls and texts, even after appearing on Gutfeld last night. So, what a guy. That's it for today. We'll be back next time, whenever that next time is. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you. My name's Larry O'Connor, by the way, but, just call me Larry.